December 19th, 1944. Bastogne, Belgium. Snow blanketed the Ardennes in a relentless white, freezing the earth and numbing fingers to the bone. The 101st Airborne, 10,000 strong, huddled in foxholes and crumbling cellars, their breaths visible in the icy air. Ammunition was running dangerously low. Medical supplies were nearly depleted. Every heartbeat was a reminder that the German encirclement was tightening. Tanks rumbled in the distance, artillery shells screamed overhead, and the relentless winter grounded Allied air support. In a command room at Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower leaned over a map spread across a heavy oak table. His eyes traced the lines of the Ardennes Bulge, lingering on the tiny red dot representing Bastogne. Advisors argued heatedly around him. "How long can they hold?" he whispered, almost to himself. 2 days, maybe 3 at most," one officer answered, voice tight with fear. "We can't guarantee anything without relief." Eisenhower's jaw clenched. The weight of the world pressed against him. Every decision, every delay, could mean annihilation for the men trapped in Bastogne. His mind raced: supply shortages, freezing temperatures, inexperienced troops under fire, and the enemy growing bolder by the hour. Meanwhile, General Patton, audacious, relentless, and singularly focused, was readying the Third Army for an advance unlike any other. Boldness was his trademark, but this was beyond audacious. Faster than any Allied unit had ever moved, Patton's armored columns had to break through snow, ice, and German defenses. Failure wasn't an option. The lives of 10,000 men depended on it. Inside Bastogne, soldiers whispered prayers and clutched rifles with frozen hands. Wounded men shivered in the cold, their groans muffled beneath the relentless drum of enemy fire. Every passing hour tightened the grip of despair, the sound of distant tanks a constant reminder that time was slipping away. Eisenhower turned to his aides, voice low but urgent, "For days. That's all they have left." A hush fell over the room. Maps were poured over, radios crackled with updates, and every man present understood the impossible calculus of the situation. One misstep, one delay, and Bastogne would fall. One man, Patton, might be the only hope left. The camera pans across snow-laden streets, frozen rifles, fearful faces, and the shadowed determination of generals plotting salvation. The tension is almost unbearable. The clock ticks relentlessly. Eisenhower's voice, barely audible over the wind outside, whispers again, more to himself than anyone else, "America is counting on you. Don't let me down." December 19th, 1944. Verdun, France. In the dim, tense situation room of Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower stood over a sprawling map of the Ardennes. The room was silent, save for the occasional rustle of papers and the low murmur of aides reporting on troop movements and weather conditions. Grim faces surrounded the table. Outside, snow fell relentlessly, blanketing the countryside and freezing every road, every supply line. The 101st Airborne was trapped in Bastogne, outnumbered, low on ammunition and medical supplies, and completely encircled by German forces. Relief from neighboring Allied units was impossible in the immediate term. "How quickly can we mount a relief operation?" Eisenhower asked, his voice cutting through the quiet. Generals exchanged glances, scribbled on maps, whispered calculations. "Sir," one began, hesitation thick in his tone, "it will take at least a week, maybe more." Eisenhower's jaw tightened. "We don't have a week. 4 days. 4 days is all," he replied, the weight of 10,000 men pressing on him with every word. The room fell silent again, the enormity of the challenge sinking in. Pivoting 3 divisions through snow-choked roads, across frozen rivers, under the watchful eyes of German forces, it seemed impossible. Then Patton rose, the room instinctively quieting as his presence dominated the space. "December 22nd, he said firmly, pointing to the map, "my 4th Armored Division attacks north. 3 divisions will pivot and move 100 miles in 48 to 72 hours. I've already prepared contingency plans." A ripple of disbelief moved through the generals. Whispers, shocked glances, barely concealed fear. "George," Eisenhower said, locking eyes with him, "can you genuinely do this?" Patton's calm confidence filled the room. "Sir, it's bold, yes. But it's feasible. Every element accounted for. We will move, and we will reach them." Tension crackled in the air. Eisenhower's mind raced. Failure meant annihilation for the 101st, catastrophe for Allied morale, and personal consequences for Patton. Yet, to do nothing guaranteed defeat. He studied the map again, noting every frozen road, every flanking maneuver, the enemy positions. Each line, each arrow, represented both a risk and a lifeline. The weight of command pressed on him, a moral burden that allowed no rest. Outside the conference room, snow fell heavier. Radios crackled with updates. Maps marked the encirclement of Bastogne in vivid detail. Eisenhower could almost feel the desperation of the soldiers trapped within. Every glance at Patton reminded him of the audacity, the singular confidence of a man willing to defy conventional limits. Generals whispered, some skeptical, others quietly impressed. The impossible was being planned in real time. December 22nd loomed on the horizon. The 48 to 72-hour window to reach Bastogne stretched before them like a gauntlet. Logistics seemed insurmountable. Frozen roads, exhausted men, armored columns navigating blizzards. It would take every ounce of courage, skill, and luck to pull it off. Yet Patton's certainty offered a glimmer of hope. Eisenhower's eyes softened briefly, hope mixed with fear. Could one man truly do what all reason said was impossible? The camera pans across close-ups of generals' faces, Eisenhower leaning over the map, Patton standing tall and unyielding. The sound of ticking clocks, rustling papers, and distant wind underscores the tension. Every decision, every command, every calculated risk counts. The stakes are human, military, and moral, all intertwined in this impossible plan. The room held its breath. The strategy was set. The impossible march awaited. Fade to black. Teaser text, the clock is ticking. Will Patton reach Bastogne in time? The impossible march begins. December 20th, 1944. The Third Army disengaged from the southern sector, pivoting 90 degrees under a sky heavy with snow. Tanks groaned as treads bit into frozen roads, infantry slogged through waist-deep drifts, and artillery crews struggled to maneuver heavy guns across icy terrain. Blizzard winds whipped across the Ardennes, slowing movement to a crawl. German artillery and sniper fire harried every column. Ambushes and snowdrifts combined to turn progress into a daily battle of endurance and willpower. Eisenhower, in Verdun, received hourly dispatches. His eyes scanned maps, reports, and telegrams, lips pressed tight in concentration. Each line represented lives at stake, each delay another chance for disaster. If they fail, he whispered to himself, 10,000 paratroopers are lost, and the Ardennes campaign may collapse. He scribbled contingency letters to the families of soldiers, his hands trembling slightly despite his best effort to remain composed. The moral weight of command pressed on him, unrelenting. December 21st brought slow but steady progress. Patton's armored divisions clawed through drifts, artillery shells rattling against tank steel plates, the groan of engines echoing across the frozen forest. Reports reached Eisenhower every hour, 2 miles gained in 6 hours, enemy blocking northern pass, severe frostbite cases among infantry. He paced, biting his lip, eyes darting between maps. Maximum effort, he typed in an urgent message to Patton. The 101st cannot hold much longer. Patton's responses were calm and resolute. I've got the men moving. We will break through. His confidence radiated across each report, quieting some of the whispered disbelief among staff. He's actually doing it, one aide murmured, shaking his head in awe. Yet the march was far from assured. Frozen roads, exhausted men, and relentless German counterattacks tested every contingency. Every hour mattered, each snowdrift a potential disaster. Inside Bastogne, the 101st Airborne faced its own desperate struggle. Ammunition was critically low, medical supplies exhausted, and the wounded shivered in freezing cellars. Artillery fire tore through the streets, sending shrapnel and debris crashing over soldiers seeking cover. McAuliffe's legendary defiance echoed through the town when the Germans demanded surrender. Nuts. Their resolve was heroic, yet survival depended entirely on the armored columns advancing from the south. Each passing day brought both relief and despair. December 22nd marked the official commencement of the attack. Patton's divisions pushed forward with relentless determination. Tanks carved narrow paths through snow-blocked roads, infantry hauled artillery shells over icy ridges, and dispatch riders dashed between units. German resistance was fierce. Artillery bombardments, machine gun nests, and sporadic armored counterattacks slowed progress but could not stop it. Each mile gained was a testament to human determination against impossible odds. December 23rd to 24th, hourly updates continued to arrive. Snowstorms threatened to halt the advance entirely. Soldiers' hands were frostbitten, their faces streaked with ice and grime. Yet for every setback, there was a small victory: a village cleared, a supply line reopened, a tank column pushing through a frozen pass. Eisenhower monitored it all, whispering to himself in the dim light of his office, pacing between maps. Hope and fear warred in his chest with every word from Patton. December 25th arrived, Christmas Day, yet there was no celebration. Soldiers pressed forward in silence, determination etched into every exhausted face. The 101st Airborne clung to Bastogne, surviving on sheer courage, their morale bolstered by reports that Patton's forces were drawing ever closer. Eisenhower's anxiety remained constant, yet a glimmer of hope emerged with each mile reported gained. Patton's confidence never wavered, his audacity a beacon against the despair of frozen forests and relentless enemy fire. December 26th approached. The final hours of the 4-day countdown were critical. Clocks ticked over the snow-strewn landscape, radio dispatches crackled with updates, and every movement mattered. Could Patton's men break through in time? Could 10,000 paratroopers, exhausted, freezing, and outnumbered, survive to fight another day? The impossible march had brought them to the brink. The stage was set for a climactic breakthrough. Fade to black. Teaser text, December 26th. The final hours. Will Patton reach Bastogne in time to save 10,000 men? The impossible march nears its climax. December 26th, 1944. The Ardennes was still shrouded in a biting winter storm. Snow fell in thick sheets, draping frozen trees and fields in white. Patton's Third Army had fought every mile of the 100-mile advance through blizzards, icy roads, and relentless German resistance. Tanks ground forward through deep snow, artillery blasted paths through enemy positions, and infantry slogged alongside, carrying shells and supplies over frozen ridges. Exhaustion etched every face, but determination burned brighter than the winter's cold. By late afternoon, Patton's lead elements neared Bastogne. Visibility was low, roads narrow, but the soldiers pressed on, following a route painstakingly cleared by engineers under fire. The first sight of the 101st Airborne's positions brought a surge of adrenaline. Trenches and foxholes were crowded with battered soldiers, rifles clutched in frostbitten hands, faces streaked with grime and snow. The 101st had held defiant, their morale bolstered by the distant rumble of approaching tanks. The first contact was cautious. A column of Sherman tanks rolled into the outskirts, soldiers of the 101st stepping forward, uncertain, then breaking into shouts of relief. "We're here. You're safe now," yelled a Patton officer over the roar of engines and the whistle of artillery. Paratroopers, exhausted and frozen, embraced their rescuers, shaking hands, tears mingling with snow on faces streaked by weeks of combat. Heroism and desperation collided in a moment of shared triumph. At Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower's phone rang at 4:50 p.m. His aide handed it over. "George, we're through to Bastogne." For a long suspended moment, Eisenhower could not speak. Relief washed over him. The sound of Patton's voice, steady and gruff, came over the line. "Just doing my job, Ike. The men did the real work." Eisenhower's shoulders relaxed, eyes moistened, and he whispered, "No, George. You moved an army 90 degrees in a blizzard. You saved 10,000 lives. That's why you're invaluable." Staff around him exchanged whispers, a mix of awe and admiration. He actually did it, against all odds. The snow-covered battlefield transformed from a scene of despair into one of hope. Patton's men secured the perimeter, distributing supplies to the 101st, evacuating the wounded, and reinforcing positions for the next phase. Soldiers, though exhausted, stood taller, proud of the courage and perseverance that had carried them through impossible conditions. Patton, walking along the column, clapped shoulders, acknowledged nods, his gruff humility tempered by pride. "We did it because the men did the work," he reminded them. Eisenhower, alone for a brief moment after the call, stared out the frost-streaked window of his office. The blizzard still raged outside, yet inside, a quiet triumph settled over him. Private thoughts mingled with strategic relief. The 101st was saved, the Ardennes campaign stabilized, and the audacity of moving 3 divisions 100 miles under extreme winter conditions had rewritten the calculus of possibility. He picked up a pen, jotting notes for his diary. Patton has saved not just Bastogne, but the Ardennes campaign. What we've witnessed is operational brilliance and human courage. Close-ups capture exhausted soldiers shaking hands, embracing, and receiving their first proper rations and medical attention in days. Maps show the relief corridor, now open and secure. Commanders and staff watch, some in disbelief, some with tears in their eyes, as hope replaces weeks of tension. The camera lingers on Eisenhower's quiet reflection, the relief on his face telling the story words cannot fully capture. December 26, 1944, 5:30 p.m., the impossible march had reached its climax. The 101st Airborne, battered yet unbroken, was finally relieved. Heroism, determination, and audacity had converged to turn the tide. The battle was far from over, but this victory had cemented the resilience of the Allied forces and the brilliance of Patton's leadership. Fade to black. Teaser text: Patton's audacity prevailed. The Ardennes campaign survived. Act 5, Legacy and Lessons of Bastogne awaits. December 27, 1944. Eisenhower sat alone in his dimly lit office at Supreme Headquarters. Maps of the Ardennes spread across the table, letters and reports scattered beside him. The snow outside glistened on the armor of Patton's advancing Third Army, a silent testament to the audacity and skill that had carried 10,000 paratroopers to safety. Eisenhower lifted his pen, paused, and began to write in his private diary, "George, your planning, courage, and execution saved lives beyond measure. The 101st held against impossible odds, and you delivered. Yet with such talent comes great responsibility. Never forget the weight of command." The events of December 26 lingered vividly in his mind. He remembered the roar of tanks breaking through snowdrifts, soldiers embracing in frozen trenches, and the sound of artillery clearing paths through German positions. Patton's operational genius, pivoting 3 divisions 100 miles in 48 to 72 hours under blizzard conditions, was a feat that defied conventional logic. Eisenhower reflected privately on the complexity of managing such a brilliant yet headstrong subordinate. Publicly, he would offer measured praise to the press and Allied leaders, but in his letters to Churchill and Marshall, he was candid. The relief of Bastogne was as audacious as it was perilous. On January 2, 1945, he wrote directly to Patton, "George, your leadership under pressure redefined what is possible. Your men performed heroically because you demanded it with clarity, courage, and confidence. Remember, the freedom to act comes with boundaries, and even brilliance must be guided." The words balanced admiration with a subtle reminder of responsibility. In private, Eisenhower pondered the human cost, the soldiers frozen, wounded, or exhausted, and the immense trust required to allow one man to carry such a burden. The Bastogne relief marked a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st Airborne survived, morale was restored, and the operational calculus of the Ardennes shifted decisively. Eisenhower understood that the feat was not only military but human, resilience, audacity, and leadership intertwined to achieve the improbable. He reflected on the broader lessons of command, the need to trust extraordinary talent, the courage to make impossible decisions, and the responsibility that weighed on every general and soldier alike. He returned to his diary, pen poised over fresh paper. "Patton's relief of Bastogne vindicated my trust, demonstrated operational excellence, and reminded me why extraordinary talent must sometimes be managed, not constrained. History will remember the victories, but the human decisions, the audacity, and the courage define true leadership." The snow continued to fall outside, silent and unyielding, yet within, a quiet pride settled. The 101st had endured. The Third Army had achieved the impossible. And the lessons of trust, leadership, and resilience would echo far beyond the frozen forests of the Ardennes. Eisenhower leaned back, exhaling slowly, a private smile crossing his face. The war would continue, battles yet to be fought, but for this moment, a decisive heroic chapter had closed. History remembered the relief of Bastogne as a turning point, but for Eisenhower, the memory was personal, a testament to human courage, the weight of command, and the brilliance of those who dared to act when reason said it could not be done.